Back when I was in college, I was part of a Christian student organization called InterVarsity Christian Fellowship on my university campus. It was a time of great growth and learning for me, a time when I was meeting friends who were also serious about their faith. It was a good experience. And in my sophomore year, a friend approached me in the early spring and said, "Hey Jim, what are you doing for spring break?" And I didn't have any specific plans, and this friend invited me to go with a group of students from InterVarsity to Florida for spring break week, to spend the week talking with people on the beaches who were there for their spring break about spiritual things, about the spiritual journey and about their understanding of who Jesus was and all those things. Sounded to me like a great idea, because these were great people, I really enjoyed them, and I had nothing else to do. So off we went on a road trip, and we got to Fort Lauderdale, which was then sort of the spring break mecca back in those days, on a Sunday night, I think, and I was shocked by what I saw. There was loud music and tons of beer, and everyone was in bathing suits, and I realized then that I had said yes to this choice without really knowing what I was getting into. Then we get up the next morning, and I find out that I'm going to be paired with one of my friends, and the job is to go out on the beach and engage people who are sunbathing in conversation about spiritual things, which sounded like such a good idea when I was back in Massachusetts. But now that I'm standing there in Florida in the sand, I'm thinking, is this really a good idea? And it was an early experience for me of coming to the end of myself, of realizing this really actually is a good thing to be doing, and I'm fearful of this thing, but if I were to step out in faith right now, I would actually grow. I would experience God in the midst of it. And I did have to work through some of that fear. My partner and I walked up and down the beach a little bit and prayed, and then finally stopped and began a conversation with someone, had an absolutely delightful conversation about the nature of faith and about the historical Jesus, and just had a great conversation, which the person actually thanked us for as we got up and left. About midway through the week, I realized I was going to need to come back the next year. That this discipline of putting myself in a position where I would need to exercise faith was an important thing for me to do. And since then, I've tried to work that principle into my life. It's hard for me to imagine what it looks like to grow in faith without understanding that I actually need to put myself into positions that will require faith of me. And that's really what we're talking about in this section of the book. The nature of faith really is that it's composed of two things. Faith is made up of belief and trust. Most of us in our churches have done the great work of learning about the belief side of faith, but the trust side is so much more difficult. The trust side of faith will actually require us to put ourselves in situations where faith is required of us. And the justice journey is that. That's why it's such rich ground for discipleship. In the journey into justice, we are inspired to and deeper faith is required of us as we engage. That's why it's such a great process for us as disciples. So this chapter really is about engaging the concept of trust in our faith. How do we become more deeply trusting disciples of a God who will lead us well into places He wants us to go? I hope you enjoy processing these questions with some friends, and I'll see you again at the end of chapter 3.